Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Saturday, May the 17th, 2025, which makes this the news for Friday, May the 16th, 2025, day 1178 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and I'm coming to you live at 5 from Kyiv, this major European capital currently under siege. And I see that the peeps are coming in. Good evening, Mel. How you doing? What's going on? Thanks for the likes, guys. Hey, Paul Smith. Hey, Mike Kelly. Hey, G2. Hey, It's a New Dawn. How you guys doing tonight? For anybody that didn't see last night's live, I got to tell you, I'm really rather proud of it. It's a really good recap on what's gone on in this tumultuous week of diplomatic insanity. Hey, Mike Kelly. Hey, Roy Daniels. How you guys doing? Hey, Bobby. Hello, Miss Holly. Renee Herman. How you doing? How's everybody doing tonight? If you see Scully around, Scully from Australia is the sponsor of tonight's live. And I really want to thank Scully and Ted and Samso and Jax, who all became first-time live sponsors. And that's really important to me, that it's not the same people always trying to support the channel, that there is a broad base of support. Hey, Sue Chappell, how you doing tonight? Mike, I assume you're not an X-Files fan. Not a big X-Files fan? Hey, Julian Patel. Hey, Greek. Yeah. Do you know how I knew? Because you spelled Scully wrong. It's S-C-U-L-L-Y. It's irrelevant, but I am a big X-Files fan. Hey, Richard Prexis, how you doing? That's it. So everybody thanks Scully. I haven't seen her come in yet, but I expect her to. Hey, Darlene. So ladies and gentlemen, how are we doing tonight? It is Friday. So the forum will be a little bit looser tonight. I have a couple things I want to talk about. The first thing is that we should all be aware. You will see in the news the story of the loss of another F-16. This is now the third F-16 that the Ukrainians have lost. The first, very tragically, was lost in a friendly fire incident. The pilot was also lost. The second was lost in a combat engagement. It was shot down by an S-400 or S-300 missile, we believe. And the pilot was not lost. He safely ejected and was recovered. And that's critical, because when you're engaging in frontline combat missions, of course, equipment is going to be lost. These F-16s are 50 fucking years old. We don't know what happened with the loss of this third F-16. The pilot declared an emergency and ejected is all that we know at this time. He was engaged in close air support combat operation. Pardon me, no, that's not correct. My apologies. No, he was engaged in shooting down aerial targets during a drone attack. He was near the front line, apparently, but he was not engaging in close air support activities. My apologies. So he's up there. He's shooting down these drones. He declares an emergency. He ejects. The plane is lost. He's okay. We're told that he's in the hospital in satisfactory condition. You're going to have equipment losses. Abrams tanks are not immortal or impervious to all damage. They're going to be lost, especially when engaged in active frontline duty, right? What we're grateful for is that the pilot was able to eject and return to duty. And so his learning, his knowledge, his skills are not lost, and the Ukrainians can continue to benefit from his knowledge and experience. Indeed, what happened, the debrief after this incident may well save future Ukrainian pilots and planes. We just don't know the details yet, right? All eyes, of course, have been on Istanbul. We went through last night the whole chaotic nonsense of Putin demanding the meeting, Trump pulling the rug out from under European allies to insist that Ukraine go, but not putting the same pressure on Russia to show up at the meeting that they called for. And so in the end, the Russians sent the same delegation that they sent to Istanbul 3 years ago, this Medinsky, who is commonly thought to have ghostwritten the Ukraine article that was attributed to Putin back in 2012 that said Ukraine is not a real country, that it's an offshoot or a province of Russia. And the Russian delegation shows up, the same people from 3 years ago, which tells you right off the bat that Putin's thoughts have not changed on this. And they haven't. Not only do the Russians show up with their old demands, that Ukrainian armed forces be limited to 85,000 soldiers, that they be limited to 350 tanks, that they be limited, right? That they basically be disarmed so that Russia can sweep in and take them over easily next time, rather than have this problem where people fight back when you invade their country. How dare they? So rather than have this problem, the Russians want Ukraine demilitarized. They want Zelensky out of office. They want elections. They want to keep all the territory that they've got. But this is the kicker. This was the new thing that came out at the meeting. They want the Ukrainians to withdraw from Kursk and Belgorod before they will even talk about a ceasefire. Now, this is important because the Russians and the North Korean dictator, the Russian dictator and the North Korean dictator, both announced to their people that Kursk had been freed of the Ukrainian presence, that they had pushed the Ukrainians out, mission accomplished, success. Now, how is Russian television and news going to report that the Russians are demanding in Istanbul the withdrawal of troops from a region that they've just said was liberated? You've got to be kidding me. I mean, it's a joke. And of course, they don't even talk about the fact that the Ukrainians are in Belgorod now, too. In fact, on the front line, the Ukrainians have taken more territory in Russia in the last week, up around Tetkino in the far west of Kursk, and down, the name of the town is like Zarabulia. It's a lot of Z's and H's and B's and Y's. It's just over the border in Belgorod, and it's a sizable town, right? It's not like a village with mom, dad, 2 kids, the dog, and the chickens. It's 1,000 people. It's a town of about 1,000 people. And the Ukrainians are apparently in control of it because we got video today of a large armored Russian assault on the town. And this, again, is in Belgorod, Russia. Now, what we saw lost in that attack on Zarabulia, I apologize to anybody that lives there. I'm sorry. That's not how it's pronounced, I know. But in this assault, for the Russians attempting to take it back, we saw 10 BMPs lost, right? Those are armored battle taxis, if you will, armored personnel carriers. And 10 BMPs lost, an unspecified number of soft targets. That is motorcycles, civilian cars, Buhanka vans, etc. So it was a scaled assault on the city, as big as the column that was destroyed in Zaporizhia on the front lines last week. The attack apparently has been repelled, as I say, from the number of losses, but we don't know that the Ukrainians stayed. This could have been a raid. This could have been just a cross-border incursion to cause some trouble, maybe even to steal supplies and ammunitions from the enemy, and to keep them off guard. Syrskyi has told us, he has said that the reason the guys are doing these incredibly dangerous, highly attritional battles inside Russia. I mean, make no mistake. Look, I know that even though the Ukrainians took more land in Russia in the last week, than the Russians have taken in Ukraine, we all know that Ukraine is hanging on by its bleeding fingernails in Russia, and with good reason. These attacks on Tetkino, on Kursk, on Belgorod are pinning the Russian troops inside Russia, preventing a large-scale incursion into the Sumy Oblast and opening a new front in Ukraine. There's an indication today, now this is the first time that I have heard this. Syrskyi was very clear 2 weeks ago in his address that those men are inside Russia to pin those troops and prevent another northern front opening. That's what they're there for. Now, some analysts are suggesting that the losses of the Russians in Kursk and Belgorod have been so extreme that they're now having to pull reserves from the Donbass, from the summer offensive campaign. It could be that the Russian need to get the Ukrainians out of Russia is so extreme that they are putting at risk now their summer campaign and drawing those reserves off of the Donbass front and moving them to Kursk. If that's true, if that's accurate, there had been 62,000 Russian troops inside Kursk. What kind of attritional rate are they suffering that they're now having to draw reserves from the Donbass? So I don't have good information on that, and I don't know that the Donbass reserves moving there is accurate. But some analysts are suggesting that that appears to be the case. Hey, Laddie, thanks for subscribing. Guys, there are a couple ways you can support this channel. You can join the Patreon if you can kick me $5 or $10 a month. Michael Kistner just joined the Patreon, and I'm very grateful to him. If I had 100 guys like you, Michael, you know, I wouldn't have to hit Cynthia up for grocery money every month. Oh, it's funny because it's true. Anyway, oh, I'm plugging along, J-Boy. How you living? So the Russians are under pressure to get the Ukrainians out of Russia, and they are not having a lot of luck. The Ukrainian presence, there he is. Hey, Michael, thanks so much. Thanks so much. You're my poster boy for joining the Patreon today. Now, look, if you don't have $5 or $10 a month to kick me, join the Patreon anyway. Get a free account. Everything on Patreon is available for free, too. But by contributing, you make it possible for this work to continue. Hey, Dark Irish. Hey, Weibo. It appears now that the Ukrainian incursion into Russia is not merely about pinning the Russian troops that are in Kursk, but it could also be, thanks, Mir, and it could also be that it is to drain the Russian reserves in the Donbass. I did publish a short news we are waking up to this morning. It was kind of an unusual one, because I spent the morning at the immigration office getting my temporary residency permit renewed. So thanks to everybody who made that possible. especially Arna, who was a large supporter of that project, and Chris Carter, and then some other people too. And so I really appreciate that. It's all done. The paperwork is signed. The I's are dotted. The T's are crossed. And I have my new temporary residence permit for the next year. So I'm committed to it for another year here. And I hope that some folks will help support that in keeping me here. Anyway, okay. So on the front line, where it's basically still deadlocked, except what we see happening in Kursk and Belgorod. Now, on the Ukrainian side, the Russians have taken in the last week another 9 square kilometers. 9 square kilometers with losses of 10,000. That's 1,000 men for every square kilometer this last week. Insanity. And it is less than 0.01% of Ukraine. I mean, it really, the number trails off. It's like 0.0006 or something percent of Ukraine. At this rate, it will take the Russians 40 million men and 150 years to take Ukraine. It's insanity. It's insanity the worst sort. Back in Istanbul, all eyes have been on the peace talks, which have been a farce. Putin insisted on them and then refused to come, sending a low-level delegation that made increasingly ridiculous demands, demanding that Ukraine make true the lie that the Russians and North Koreans have told their people, that they're out of Ukraine. I would point out, coming right up is June 6th. June 6th is both the 2-year anniversary of this channel. The very first video I posted, I'll never forget, was on June 6th, and it got 600 views. My buddy Travis texted me the next morning saying, congratulations, you got 600 views. I woke up to that text, and I had never had 600 views on anything. And immediately we were off to the races then. I was hooked here on the Tickety Talk. So June 6th is also the 10-month anniversary of Ukrainians going to bed, waking up every day in control of some Russian territory. 10 months. August 6th was the Kursk incursion. For 10 months, the Ukrainians living and controlling Russian territory inside Russia have been an embarrassment and a slap in the face to Putin every day. They've also given the Ukrainians more cards than they had, no matter what Donald Trump says about Ukraine not having cards. It looks like Ukraine has all the cards from where I'm standing. 2 things came out of the peace talks, in my opinion. 1, Russia's not serious about any of this. They're full of shit, even while they talk peace to Donald Trump. They are preparing for their summer offensive. We have good intelligence to suggest that that is the case. Or rather, the Ukrainians have made available good intelligence to suggest that is the case. The other thing that came out of the talks is there's going to be 1,000 prisoners swapped. So they're going to do a mutual 1,000 Russian for 1,000 Ukrainian prisoners. That's 1,000 Ukrainians that will be spared further torture and God knows what else. Torture, starvation, the nightmare of captivity inside Russia, and we'll be home. We'll be home. So let's keep our eyes and ears open for the return of those Ukrainian prisoners to Ukraine. And I think that's about it for me. We can just go to open Q&A and discussion. Those are the top line stories today. And yeah, today was a tough day with the immigration office and some other things I had on my plate. Anybody got any questions, comments, points of observation, current state of the war? Top geezer. I am the top geezer. Damn right, Jack Muss. Top geezer. I never thought I'd live this long. Well, I wouldn't claim an understanding of Ukraine. As a matter of fact, I just had, like in my personal life here, I just had a terrible cultural misunderstanding with someone. Does it look like the RPGs on drones is working out? So, Michael, the RPG drones, the Ukrainians have developed this amazing thing where they can slap not just an RPG round on a drone that the drone can drop, right? But they can attach the RPG itself, the cannon, which means that they can fire it at any angle they want. It's an amazing technology. But to the best of my knowledge, Michael, it's available only as a prototype. It's a new thing. I don't know that it's been engineered into a capability yet. Can you imagine what you'd have to do to handle the recoil on a drone-launched RPG in midair so that the rocket-propelled grenade gets to the target you want it to hit without just going off wildly because the recoil slaps the drone 2 feet back up in the air or whatever? So I can't say that that's yet a capability. It's an emergent innovation on the battlefield. No, Trump's not going to Turkey. Nobody's going to Turkey. Yeah, thanks, Bobby. Does Ukraine know where Russia keeps the POWs? I'm sure they do, Walter. And I'm sure if they could do anything about it, they would. And Michael, they can. Those RPG drones are reusable. If they get out of there safely, there's no reason they can't be reused. Ross is saying rockets don't have recoil? How can that be, Ross? I don't, how can that, maybe you're right. But that doesn't seem possible to me. Hey, Jeff. Trump is a turkey. I don't agree. So Weibo, who knows a little bit more about this than I do, says they do, but it's limited. So Weibo, I mean, the thing is in the air already, right? It doesn't even have a guy holding on to it. These are quadcopters that are taking this thing up. I would think there'd have to be some precision calculation to determine the force so that the grenade goes where the FPV launcher wants it to go. I can't imagine that that's not the case. No, but Arna says not much recoil. More recoil on a shotgun. It's the blow from the rocket that is a challenge. Interesting. I'll have to try to take a look at some of that. Have you heard about any military aid from anyone for Ukraine? So the European Union is making available 1.9 billion euros in interest from frozen Russian assets. 1 billion of that will be spent right inside Ukraine. So it'll go to the Ukrainian government. They will field contracts for weapons from Ukrainian manufacturers. They will inject that billion euros into the economy, which is a big deal in a country this size. And that will provide for lots of good paying jobs and direct supply of armaments to the front line. From the factory to the front line, no NATO logistics bullshit, no crossing the Polish border bullshit. Just bang, bang, it's there. The other $9 billion will be spent on weapons purchases from European Union countries. And I think some of that 900 million, if I'm not mistaken, is going for some humanitarian projects and to keep the government functioning. Evening, Cole. Roy Daniels just sent me an article about current estimated stockpiles of weapons in Russia seems high. Roy, it is inconceivable how many weapons the Russians had at the start of this war. They have lost nearly 11,000 tanks, the same they lost in World War II, by the way. And the stockpile is still estimated to be about 5,000 to 6,000 tanks. Because when the Soviet Union collapsed, what the Russians did was they said, okay, everybody, everything you have belongs to us. And they demilitarized everybody. They took virtually all of it back from everywhere it had been in the Soviet Union. They stole 40 planes from the Kazakhs. I mean, which kind of plane? The bombers, not the Tu-22s. The 95s, the Tu-95s, 40 of them from the Kazakhs. They just took it all back. And they piled it up and they kept it for themselves. This war has gone a long way toward demilitarizing and eliminating the vestiges of the Soviet stockpiles. We have reports, these are unverified, I want to say, but there are reports that the big armories in the east of the country are all empty. That they've pulled everything out of there, all the weapons, all the ammunition. It's all come west to go into Ukraine. Those big armories that the Ukrainians have been hitting, like the 51st GRAU that created such an explosion outside of Moscow a couple weeks ago. Something like a year's worth of artillery shells went up in that one explosion. They have 12 of those that are within range of Ukrainian drones. 12 of those. The Ukrainians have only blown up 3 so far. They hit 2 more, but they didn't have the same effect. So the Russian stockpiles are enormous. How long do you think before sanctions actually work? Sanctions are working. Their effect, here's the problem. You're not wrong. Sanctions are not a short-term solution. The immediate impact is that new supply chains get built through third-party countries and shell corporations that then route the stuff to avoid the sanctions, right? But right off the bat, you do that. Everybody along the way has to get a cut. And because the consequences of being discovered as part of this new illegal supply chain can be so dramatic, everybody needs a significant cut. So something that cost you $200 suddenly costs you $600. That kind of inflationary pressure and lack and inconsistent supply as sources get choked off by local law enforcement in individual countries makes for a very tenuous and difficult situation over the long haul. In the short term, you consume everything that you've got in country, that you bought against this threat, which it's important to point out that Putin spent 3 years building up critical stockpiles of Western components, electronics, etc., that he knew would be cut off when the war started. So they started out with a year's worth of shit ready to go. A year ago, and remember, the sanctions didn't go into effect until about a year into the war. So the first year of the war, things are pretty normal. They have lots of stockpiles of stuff. They can still get more stuff, still stockpile more. They stockpile a year's worth. The sanctions go into effect. They still have a year's worth of stuff on hand. They start the process of building those third-party supply chains. So it takes 2 years for the inflationary pressure of the sanctions to begin to start to degrade the economy or affect the production of war material. The situation in Russia economically is not good, and much of that is driven by the sanctions. You got a 21% interest rate, you got a 10% inflation rate officially. Hankey's reports it much higher. You've got 4.2 million unfilled jobs. You've got the Russians basically shanghaiing Ugandan women, and the latest victim is Botswana, shanghaiing women from Africa to work in the drone factory in Tatarstan because they can't get people. They don't have the bodies to do the work. An estimated 1.1 to 1.5 million men fled the country in the early days of the war to avoid the meat grinder. They're never coming back. So right off the bat, 1.1 million men, let's call it, gone. You factor in Russia's demographic crisis because nobody wants to have babies there. The death rate outpaces the birth rate, 1 birth to 2.5 deaths. Russians lose one citizen a net loss of one citizen every 47 seconds. That's a culture in collapse. Roy Daniel says the Russians are supposed to have 300 to 600 long-range missiles, including KH-101s. I mean, I don't know what the monthly production numbers for KH-101s are, but I know that they are still manufacturing them. If anything, that seems low to me, given the rate at which they fire them at this country, Roy. Hey, Living Legend. Ambulance in your America, Kurdik. I don't know. Is that a sentence, Kent? I don't know what that means. Bobby, I don't know. I'm not a weapons I don't know shit about weapons, as I just demonstrated, talking about the recoil on a rocket-propelled grenade. So I can't say what the status of those 50 stockpiles are. I mean, I'll tell you, I took a box of shotgun shells out of my father's filing cabinet one time that had fallen down behind some papers in there. And they were produced in the 1950s. This would have been sometime in the 70s. And they shot just fine. So it all depends, I think, on storage. Another inexplicable comment from Kent. Another ammo storage was hit overnight, was still exploding today. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Nightshade, you're talking about the one in Crimea, right? It wasn't, or wait, was there another one in Rostov, did I see? Thanks, Pistol Pete. Yeah, Crimea. So I don't have details on that, only that it was cooking off for hours and hours and hours. Would Ukraine benefit from a resistance like the French? They have one, Brian. Probably so. If you have not heard anything at all about Ukrainian partisan activity behind the lines, we talk about the Ejects group and the Eye and some others on here all the time. There is an active Ukrainian resistance movement in both the temporarily occupied territories and inside Russia. The Ejects group just took credit overnight last night for burning another relay cabinet on Russian railroad in Crimea, if I'm not mistaken. Or it might have been in Melitopol, but it was down in that area. So these relay cabinets, they control the tracks. And so if you burn the relay cabinet, all the automation involved in running your railroad goes right out the window. And these relay cabinets, while they can be replaced, take some time to repair. And in the meantime, you got to have railroad engineers out there manning the manual right shifts to switch the tracks. And that slows down the delivery. That slows down the delivery of all the ammo to the front line, all the resources to the front line. It slows it down. The Russians are heavily dependent upon train and train infrastructure to get the shit to the front line. And so taking that all offline is clearly in Ukraine's interest. And the Ejects partisan group are doing things like that every single day. I just saw, now this was very interesting. No, the cabinet was definitely in Crimea. What I saw in Mariupol, there are signs up all around town, stapled to the telephone poles, promoting the Ejects partisan group, the resistance movement. Now dig it. Why is this important that they're putting up posters or flyers, whatever? Because to do that out in the open, on the streets, means that the Russian police presence, the military police presence that keeps the local population submissive, isn't there. They've been called to the front. That's a hollowing out of the Russian influence and occupation inside of the temporarily occupied territories. That's good news for everybody. Well, except the Russians. Paul, you're absolutely right. The only reason that this war has gone on so long and everybody's been so timid about dealing with the Russians is because they claim to have 6,000 nuclear weapons. They don't, by the way. We're pretty certain that they don't have anywhere near that work anyway. But still, even if they have 1,000 nuclear weapons, that's a problem. That's a problem. Okay. So Kent must get paid by the ruble, by the post, and apparently just by posting nonsense, he can get paid. So that's done. Had the Ukrainians had a level playing field, this would have been a very different discussion. You're damn right, Bernard, it would have been. Hey, Pugga Mahone. So Pugga Mahone's in Germany, right? And we're all waiting on word that MERS is sending Taurus missiles here. However, it is worth pointing out that, nice, Weevo. It's worth pointing out that MERS has just made it so that all of Germany's weapons deliveries to Ukraine are secret. So he may have decided to thwart Trump, because Trump is opposed to the Taurus missile thing, by sending the Taurus in secret. I think I speak for everybody that's watching this thing. We were all so galvanized when it appeared that the U.S. and the European leadership were on the same page on Saturday, where both the European leadership and the American leadership were calling for an immediate ceasefire or bone-crushing sanctions against Russia. And then on Sunday, Trump pulled the rug out from underneath Macron, Merz, and Starmer by saying Putin doesn't want a ceasefire. He wants talks in Turkey. Everybody, we should just go to the talks in Turkey. Just do what my dear friend Vladimir needs us to do. Did you see Trump on the plane yesterday? Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen until I meet with Putin. He is so desperate for new marching orders. This thing is not going according to plan. The Ukrainians have resisted the neo-colonial economic coercion of the minerals deal. They have told Trump to go fuck off with his bullshit in the nicest possible way. But they aren't letting themselves be bullied by him. And Trump doesn't know what the fuck to do. He's got to talk to Putin in person to get his new marching orders. He is so desperate. The best thing that the American Congress and the handlers of this orangutan in Louis Vuitton can do is keep him away from Putin. Do not let him meet without interpreters with Putin. Keep him away. That is the best we can do right now, apparently, because no one can arrest this felon, this convicted felon, who is derailing the economies of North America and bringing on a global recession on purpose so that he can be richer and by making everybody else poor. It's obscene. Trump is batting 1,000 and supporting Putin. Yes, he is. Hey, Brian. Scotty, you're right. He knows better than to leave Russia if he's even still alive. If the Russians aren't just parading out doubles anytime they need them, we don't know. We don't know. Nobody here can tell me with 100% certainty that Vladimir Putin is even still alive and that we are not all being suckered in this bullshit round robin of Putin doubles that some shadowy cabal inside of the Kremlin who's got the real power is parading in front of us. Sam, there's a lot of reasons. Budanov has said that we have not actually seen the real Putin in public since July of 2022. July of 2022. Then you have the Japanese scientists, right? The facial recognition and voice recognition experts who have mapped the faces of Putin at his various appearances. And they identify at least 3 men who are not Putin, who are supposed to be Putin. And none of the men in recent public appearances are the real Putin. The voice prints are clearly distinct. For any amateur, you can look at the graphs of the voice prints and see they're not the same graphs, not even close. Then there is this question of Putin's behavior. So Putin, very unusually, wears his watch on his right hand. The vast majority of people, because the vast majority of people are right-handed, wear their watch on their left hand. One of my favorite moments is when Pinch Face, the body double I call Pinch Face, when Pinch Face was on doing an interview, he looked at his watch, but he looked at the wrong wrist. Now, if you've worn your watch on your right hand your whole life, you don't accidentally glance at your left wrist. It's just a habit. But if you're another person who doesn't live that way, you do that. Then there's the fact that for months and months, for years during COVID and after, Putin wouldn't get closer than 30 feet to anybody. It has been speculated that that was not so much a fear of COVID as it was a fear that people who had met Putin before might recognize that they were not talking to the Putin, that they were talking to a body double. And yet, when it came down to it, and there were problems with Dagestan and Chechnya, and Putin really needed to go to Dagestan and kind of glad hand the people, this germaphobe freak who hasn't let anybody near him closer than 30 feet in 2 years is out in the crowd shaking hands, kissing babies, letting women hug him. Strangers in a crowd. Not Putin behavior. Renvox points out the DNA tracing question. We know that since at least 2014, whenever Putin travels with a poop case, a suitcase into which he defecates. Apparently, the thinking is they don't want anyone to get a hold of a stool sample because the DNA would show either that he was sick, had cancer, or that it just wasn't him. So that's a great question, Michael Kistner. I don't know about Xi, and I don't know the answer to that. It's a great question. So now look, I am not promulgating the idea that Putin is unalived. I'm not saying that. But there is circumstantial evidence to indicate, well, no, there's hard evidence to indicate that he has at least 3 body doubles. At least 3. Then there's also evidence to indicate that the Russians appear to have taken great lengths, great measures, to hide the fact that he is in fact sick. Then there's the question of the shakes. Intermittently, Putin appears to display signs of Parkinson's. Now, could it be that the real Putin has Parkinson's? Or could it be that one of the body doubles has Parkinson's? That is unclear. That is very unclear. We have reports that Putin had a heart attack. Maybe he didn't. Maybe one of the doubles had a heart attack. The doubles would all have to be about his age. So, look, the Russians lie about everything. They lied to their own people about them getting the Ukrainians out of Kursk. And then go to the negotiating table and say, Ukraine must leave Kursk now, or we now have ceasefire. I mean, they need the Ukrainians to make the lies they've told their own people true. I mean, it's a joke. Right now It's a New Dawn mentions this. Rubio said today about Trump meeting Putin ASAP, and the Russians said it will take time to organize it. Now, is that just because Putin is an absolutely dementia-ridden, sick, paranoid psychopath who is so afraid of assassination that he needs to control all the circumstances under which the meeting will take place? Or is it because the Russians can't actually produce a Putin in person that anybody will believe is real? Hey, Seawolf. Putin is in Mar-a-Lago, East Wing. That could be. You know the Chinese know who is the real Putin. They invented the technology. Do you think we will have World War III? We're in World War III. World War III started February 24th, 2022. You know, it's just when you read the history books, right? You know, the mustache man comes to power in Germany in 35, 36, something like that. Well, the end of the war is 45. That's 10 years. We're only in year 11 of the first invasion of Ukraine. Year 3 of the full-scale invasion. And we already see the world spiraling out of control. The Middle East has heated up. The Houthis, with the help of the Chinese, the Iranians, and the Russians, are threatening the freedom of navigation of international waterways in the Red Sea. China's ratcheting up its rhetoric around Taiwan. The Pakistanis and the Indians are at each other's throats on the verge of a limited nuclear exchange. Both of them beating their chests and claiming victory in the recent bombings. Iran is this close, we're this close to having an apocalyptic theocracy with nuclear weapons. And that's all because of Donald Trump, because he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal when he was president. Because he wants to nuke the Iranians. He wants to press the big red button. That's going to be his favorite thing. That's who he is. That's what he is. I agree, Lars. Lars says this is World War III. It's already started, but it can be stopped by stopping Russia. Could Putin be using body doubles to avoid being assassinated by someone in Russia? Yes, definitely. Oh, yeah. The rumors are going, now again, this is rumor mill stuff, but the rumors out of Russia are that Putin's personal guards are now being searched before they're allowed to come on shift for unauthorized weapons, I don't know, communication device, I don't know. But right, so then the question becomes, well, who's doing the searching? Well, that appears to be FSB officers. So Putin there are lots of reports that Putin is paranoid regarding his own safety, both inside and outside of Russia. Okay, guys, we're just about out of time here. His guards have to be armed, Michael, right? Mr. Marmite, the FSB is the Russian, I mean, I would say it's like the FBI, but it's more like, it's an internal security force. It's the inheritor of the KGB. The KGB became the FSB. So all the evil, terrible things that you know the KGB did, the FSB are doing today. All dictators are paranoid about assassination, exactly. Because dictators don't have retirement plans. It does not work out well for them. Oh, there's plenty of FSB still, Scotty. Plenty. The ruble is currently the best performing currency in the world. It has regained, it had lost about 40% of its value from the start of the war, and it's regained about half of that. Why? Because Donald Trump is driving down the value of the American dollar. His policies are intentionally devaluing the US currency. Now you can say to yourself, well, why would he do that? Because it's straight out of the post-Soviet collapse Russian oligarch playbook. You devalue the currency, you raise the interest rates, you saddle the people with debt, you sell off the assets of the government to the oligarchs you want to have power and wealth. He's doing this, he's wrecking the American economy so he can have the largest fire sale in history and sell off our assets to his friends in Saudi Arabia, the Russian oligarchs, all of these bastards, and bring them all to the United States like he's doing with the South Africans, who can then grift on the American people. It is not stupidity. It is not wishful thinking on his part. It is by design. By design. Make no mistake. It is intentional. And the outcome is to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few. His coterie. He's now trying to mobilize the National Guard, trying to suspend habeas corpus, arresting judges, deporting Americans, $5 million citizenship green cards for sale. It's a crime. and a sin. Again, I want to thank Scully, who is the sponsor of tonight's live, as well as Ted and Samso and Ejects, who are all first-time live sponsors, and that's really appreciated, guys. I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps group, Jay and Travis, the moderators, and Lars, who has the Discord server. Oh my God, you can't eliminate birthright citizenship without a constitutional amendment. That's not a thing. And yet he keeps talking about it. Some of the legislation on this is before the Supreme Court right now, Bobby. So it'll be very interesting to see where this Supreme Court that was bought and paid for by Donald Trump and his friends rules on this matter, this fundamental constitutional matter. Herom Slava, Pistol Pete. Thank you, Scotty. Guys, Scully was our sponsor tonight. Ted is going to be our sponsor on Monday. That's the only sponsor I have for next week. So if anybody can sponsor live, the PayPal is in the description. If you don't have a free Patreon account, get one and tune in for the news we are waking up to this morning, every morning. Except today. Today's was more a personal message to Patreon folks. Follow me on YouTube, X, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, whatever your preferred social media platform is, Blue Sky. A pillar of righteousness, Trump Towers in the Middle East. More like the corruption tour. It is the outro for the stream, Raul. Yes, I would say that. That's fair. I thank everybody that supports the channel. Then basically we say goodnight. Or take any final questions. Bip, I was never a big Pearl Jam fan. I don't know that one. I mean, I probably do if I heard it, but I can't... It doesn't inspire me or anything. Pillar of money laundering, damn right. Good night, Pugga Mahone. Good night, Owls Are Magic. Good night, Renvox. Good night, Sammy. Thanks, everybody. We got 1 minute left. Anything else? Good night, Sam. It is just 1 a.m. here, Mike. Guys, if you did miss last night's live, it's posted to the Peters Peeps groups on Facebook and to YouTube. And I got to tell you, I'm a little bit proud of it. Like, it's a pretty good one. It may be the best live I ever did, honestly. It's a weird thing to say that. I hope I don't sound too... It may be the best live I ever did, honestly. It's a weird thing to say that. I hope I don't sound too arrogant about it, but it's solid. It's a solid one. And it explains a lot of what's been happening this past week in what I hope is an easy to follow litany with solid detail. Very, very fact-based. Just yesterday, that would have been the one that was, it would say recorded midnight, May 16th. Recorded midnight, May 16th is how it would be listed, Bobby. But you were here last night. Don't you remember how great I was? All right, kids, that's it for me. It's 1 a.m. here in beautiful uptown Kyiv. And I got a long day tomorrow. I got to be out the door at 10 o'clock. So I will see everybody. Take care.